Cafe on ET Now with me, Somit Sarkar, and my co-anchor Ankita Saxena. First up, let's go across to the US markets, Ankita. Headed for a weekly losses.
Absolutely, Somit. Today's Friday and we're headed for weekly losses. The sell-off continues. Stocks stumbled yesterday as banks and other financial stocks sold off, and the investors are bracing themselves for a key payroll report that's due as of today, and that could really shape the direction of interest rates going forward. The S&P 500 slid 1.8%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average dove 543 points, down more than 1.5%, and the Nasdaq Composite shed 2% in trade yesterday. Somit, so clearly there is no stopping of this sell-off for now, and we are clearly headed for weekly losses. Now, the Dow closed below its 200-day moving average for the first time since November 9th. And for the week and the year, the 30 stock index is down 3.4% and 2.7% respectively. Both the S&P and the Nasdaq are up 2% and 8.3% in 2023 respectively, but are on track for weekly losses of 3% or more. If you look at the European markets fell moderately yesterday. The Pan-European Stock 600 provisionally closed 0.1% lower, largely flat, but in the red. FTSE closed down more than 0.5%, and CSE was down 0.1%, largely flat. DAX was also flat, however, ended the day in the green, marginally in the green, but largely flat. So a mixed bag coming in from the European markets. What about crude? Somit, take us through where the crude is at on Friday.
Well, Brent crude prices, if you see, they have been continuously declining for the last three straight sessions, and yesterday it slipped by around 1%, and this was on increased worries that the US Federal Reserve may go too far with its interest rate hike to control inflation, which could actually put the country or the world into a recession and thereby impacting the future oil demand. Now, currently, if you see, Brent crude is trading around the $81.6 per barrel mark, and this is the third straight day of decline. And so far, if you see, Brent crude has declined by around 5%. However, when we come to gas prices, again a third straight day of decline, but the declines were marginally lower compared to what we have seen earlier. And yesterday's decline was largely on the back of the fact that the inventories are rising. So because of excess supply or excess surplus in the market, gas market that we have been seeing, we are seeing a decline when it comes to gas prices also. Singapore gross refining margin, they remain largely flat around $7 per barrel mark, while gas prices in Asia also remain largely stable at around $13 to $14 per MMBTU mark yesterday.
All right, and let's quickly take you through the events that will take place as of today. We have the Indian industrial production data that's likely to come out today. Also, for Ajanta Pharma, there is going to be a board meeting to discuss the share buyback. And for HAL, we have the board meeting on to discuss their interim dividend announcement. And of course, amongst the other events, we have the Amphi data that's likely to come out. We have the Amazon future retail dispute. We'll have some news on that. And of course, India and US will be holding a commercial dialogue as of today. So these are the events that we will be keeping an eye out on. Somit, take us through what are the news that's making global headlines.
Well, the important coup that the street had been waiting for is the US initial jobless claims, which have hit a 10-week high of 211,000 versus 190,000 that we had seen in the previous week. Now, this is signaling that the labor market might be losing its ability to defy gravity. Now, on that, let's listen to what Greg Earlham and Sharmila Whelan had to say.
The Powell and the Fed are very, very much focused on inflation and getting it below 2% or towards 2%. And the things that are concerning them that more than overwhelms any softening in the labor market are two things. One is the personal consumer expenditure price index. For January, the readings showed an acceleration both in the headline and the core. And within that, if you look at services, there's no deflationary pressures coming through there on the core services. That's number one. Number two is wage growth and the tightness of the labor market. Wage growth has slowed somewhat, but the Fed is very clear that this is not consistent with their inflation target. So to me, it's the softening of the labor market is not going to cause the Fed to reverse course on what they've said earlier this week in the Senate hearing.
This political back and forth happens and can happen for many months. We see the Treasury going to find extraordinary ways in order to try and survive a little bit longer. And as the deadline approaches, the two sides come together and a solution is reached. It's all about trying to maximize the leverage ultimately, especially for the opposition party. And therefore, I don't think either side is actually seriously considering allowing this to pass. The Fed chair has warned that they couldn't limit any overspill that happens as a result of it. But also, I just don't think the US, in the longer term, has any desire to allow that to happen, and that's Republicans and Democrats alike. So I think we should try and ignore the public back and forth because neither side has anything to gain by letting this happen.
Right, and shares of Silicon Valley Bank plummeted a whopping 60% after announcing a $1.75 billion stock sale, pushing the market capitalization to just above the $6 billion mark. The move dragged other banking names. The S&P 500 bank tumbled 6%, the biggest single-day decline in over 2 years.
Well, the US President Joe Biden fires a $6.9 trillion budget proposal, cutting deficit by nearly $3 trillion. Now, the president is also proposing a 25% minimum tax on the billionaires as part of a series of proposed taxes hikes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Now, Biden's spending plan would also nearly double the capital gains tax for investment from 20% to 39%.
And amid flaring concerns around energy security taking center stage, the OPEC chief has said that considerable investments are needed in the energy space to meet rising global demand and ensure market stability. Also, emphasis on the need to transform and decarbonize operations.
Well, after a dismal response to Marvel's latest Ant-Man, which has logged just $420 million after a 3-week stand at the box office, Disney CEO Bob Iger has questioned finally the Marvel's universe sequels. Says he wants something new out of the MCU universe. Now, Iger says it's time for newness from the franchise.
An important news flow from the US, where New York City prosecutors have indicated that former President Donald Trump could face charges for making hush payments to adult film actor and director Stormy Daniels.
Well, General Motors has announced a voluntary buyouts to as many as 58,000 white-collar employees with a view to slash nearly $2 billion in structural costs over the next couple of years. Now, the company expects to take a pre-tax charge of up to $1.25 billion related to these buyouts, according to the public filing. The charge is expected to be all cash and occur in the first half of the fiscal.
And on to geopolitics, Russia has fired a wave of missiles across war-struck Ukraine, killing at least 9 civilians and knocking out power in the capital city of Kyiv. The mass strikes was the first such wave since mid-February, shattering the longest calm since Moscow began its campaign to ravage Ukraine's infrastructure 5 months ago.
And in the neighboring country, it seems like the clock is ticking for the former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. After many attempts at dodging the law, the Lahore Police today booked him and 400 others on charges of murder and terrorism. Now, this is after his party supporter clashed with the police personnel during the party's rally that left one activist dead and scores injured. As per reports, this is the 88th case that has been filed against Imran Khan. Police have also arrested over 100 workers of Imran Khan's party, Tehreek-e-Insaf.